All right, Mr. President, the time is now 1:04 p.m. and you can call the meeting to order.
Thank you. I will call the meeting to order now and welcome everybody to this very special Board of Supervisors meeting, Wednesday, August 7th, 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And Mr. Callaghy and Supervisor Mueller are going to be participating remotely. And Mr. Clerk, if you could review the public participation guidelines and also if Victor is here.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. President. Members of the public, the live interpretation of this entire meeting will be provided in Spanish. To access live interpretation services in Zoom, please click the globe icon in your Zoom webinar controls and then select the Spanish language. At this time, I would like my colleague to provide these instructions in Spanish.
Good afternoon, President Slocum, honorable supervisors, county staff, and all members of the public. Teresa Mendeville with On Point Language Solutions, miembros del público. Las instrucciones para participar en la reunión de hoy se pueden encontrar en el orden del día publicado. Estas instrucciones proporcionan información sobre cómo presentar comentarios por escrito y también cómo participar a través de Zoom. Se les ofrecerá interpretación en directo de toda la reunión en español. Para acceder a los servicios de interpretación en directo, haga clic en el icono del globo, es decir, un mundo en los controles de su reunión o webinar de Zoom y después seleccione su idioma. Muchas gracias.
Thank you. Back to you.
Thank you. Now we'll turn to the Pledge of Allegiance, and if you could stand, and if not, just join us. And I'll lead the pledge today. All right. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everybody. Now we'll do a roll call.
Thank you. Supervisor Pine?
Present.
Thank you. Supervisor Corzo?
Present.
Thank you. Supervisor Mueller?
Present.
Thank you. Supervisor Canepa? And President Slocum?
Here.
Thank you. All present.
Thank you. Okay, now we'll need a motion to set the agenda. Does somebody want to make that motion?
I'll move to set the agenda.
Very good. Second. There we go. Roll call, please.
Sure. Supervisor Pine?
Yes.
Thank you. Supervisor Corzo?
Yes.
Supervisor Mueller?
Yes.
Supervisor Canepa? Yes. President Slocum?
Yes.
Thank you. Agenda is set.
Very good. Item number 1 on our agenda is to receive a report from county staff about the work and consultation that the Board of Supervisors directed regarding the proposal to place on the ballot at the November 5th, 2024 general presidential election and Article 34 ballot measure and provide direction regarding any future steps. And I believe County Executive Callaghy is on the line and he's going to kick this off. Is that right?
Yes, President Slocum and members of the board, I really appreciate this opportunity. I wish I was there in person with you for this special meeting. I'd just like to start the meeting by saying that I will not be asking the board to take a position on whether to put this on the ballot or not. We will not be putting it on the ballot at this point in time. This is an informational also only to give me the information back that you asked me to go out and obtain after the July 22nd, 2024 special meeting. And as you remember, that meeting was really, as the president so articulated just a minute ago, was really to determine if this should be put on the ballot, and was brought in haste because of the situation at the state, where I think that we all thought that the state ballot measure would be, in fact, going forward and allowing the voters of California to weigh in on Article 34. It was decided late that that was not going to happen, and after discussions, we tried to bring this to the board to have that discussion whether we should move it forward or not. And the board asked me to go back and do some things, which I'll get into in 1 minute. The premise of this is when we presented it was that it would allow all public agencies within the county to develop and construct and acquire low-income housing projects for up to 1% of the housing units, which is about just under 3,000 per year, and then they would be banked if not used. The key to that was public agency. So this would have allowed cities, the county, school districts, HART, and others to work together to build housing, affordable housing for those in need. And I think I indicated in the last meeting that we had some 11,000 people on the waiting list for vouchers. And I talked about how many people are just priced out of this county: our service workers, our county employees, our city employees, our police, our fire, our veterans, our seniors, and certainly our service workers that take care of us every day in the restaurants and coffee shops and automobile service stations. All of those are facing an uphill battle to live in this county. I think that a lot of people would be surprised when we talk about this to know that we do have affordable housing units all over the county. We have been collaborating for years with cities to build affordable housing. And I'll talk a little bit about that, because I think that this board should be very proud of your record in building affordable housing in the county. But what the board asked me to do was to reach out to the 20 cities and get feedback. And to also, I think it was Supervisor Mueller that asked if a survey could be done. And at that time, I did not think, with the limited amount of time we had to make that decision whether to put this on the ballot or not, that a survey could be done. And I think I articulated that in the last meeting. And then Supervisor or the President Slocum followed up after the meeting and said, hey, well, it would be great to have a poll done anyhow, just to determine whether it met whether we were able to finish it by the time it needed to be put on the ballot or not. So we did contact Brian Gobby, kind of our go-to person on these, and I was surprised and wrong, because somehow Brian was able to put together a very, very hasty survey and ask a bunch of questions to determine how this would poll, this particular Article 34 question would poll in this county. And we'll talk about that polling in a second. But I just do want to iterate, that I think sometimes we're all disappointed, and certainly we can understand the confusion around housing and who needs it and why it's so important for people who don't live it every day and see it every day and live in this county, have lived in this county for a long time. It's difficult to comprehend sometimes the unbelievable necessity and desire to live in this county for those who can't. And every day I'm hearing about police officers or our service workers who can't afford to live here and are leaving this county to go elsewhere. And Supervisor or President Slocum, you'll remember you just sent me last week one of our county employees who, not related to this, articulated her frustration with the inability to obtain housing in this county, and indicated she's going to have to move. Doesn't want to, loves working here, but is going to have to move because she can no longer make ends meet. And we see that for so many in our school teachers. And we all have stories about folks that we know that simply can't afford to live here and are moving out. I think we also agree that Article 34 really has no business in a sophisticated and forward-thinking county like San Mateo County. We are way, way, way beyond that in this county, in the way that we operate and the things that you have done to provide housing. And you're able to do that. And certainly one day when Article 34 hopefully goes away, it'll untie another hand that's tied behind our back, and we'll be able to utilize tools there for us as a government agency to unleash the harness and power of government housing, sponsored housing, in a way that people don't even realize. And some of that's just preservation of housing for those that are now living in affordable housing. But the key is how we do that and how we communicate that. And I'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. Just going to the polling data. And again, I want to thank Brian. He's on the line here. He certainly can answer any questions that any of you may have about the polling. The polling, it actually, the question of rolling back Article 34 in this county actually fared well in the survey. I believe, if I'm correct, it was at 57% with a margin of error of 5%. So it was in the majority. And Brian can certainly answer specifics about that. But I do think that we have to do more education with the public. And I know that the other part of that was asking the cities for their input. And typically we don't operate in this hurry up offense. This was an extraordinary situation where we know that the dire need for housing is every single day. And the question became, do we wait for another election cycle, or do we try to do it on this one? And ultimately, I think the prudent thing is, in fact, to wait for another election cycle. And I think I clearly heard that from my colleagues in the cities. And I value their opinions and their input. And I value all of those who responded in Redwood City and San Mateo and South San Francisco and Millbrae and I know I'm forgetting, I think Half Moon Bay and others. And I think it's important to listen to them because we have always been a collaborative county. We've got projects going right now with cities in San Carlos and in Redwood City for affordable housing. And if you look back at our history, we have a strong history of collaborating in this county. I think really that's what sets us apart from other counties. Are we going to disagree at times? Absolutely. That's just the nature of a family. You see that in families. But overall, I can tell you from around the state, most counties are envious of the relationship that we have and the way that we work together as a county. And we will continue to do that. Some of the questions that I thought were very good that some of my colleagues around the county asked, and namely, they were wondering, about would this usurp the authority of the cities? And some of the feedback we certainly saw said, that the county is going to do away with our zoning and come in and take control over local zoning. That is absolutely not the case, and certainly not the desire for anyone. But I can understand how, with the lack of information, certainly those misconceptions can spread and can manifest itself in different ways and different thoughts. So one of the questions is, the ability to work with the cities, whether it's HART or whether it's the school districts. And I think that certainly spending more time with the cities and forming a subcommittee, we can get to that. Other counties have done this. We're a very collaborative county, whether it's requiring cooperation between the entities, whether it's HART or in the city, or the county and the cities, or a city and the county who wants to do something in the county territory. That is something that I'm sure that we can get to and figure out a formula that benefits everyone. The other area was the distribution of housing. That was the question. And, I really think that that's a really good point, and something that, given more time, we certainly would have addressed in a more holistic way and really kind of come to an agreement on that. And I think that there are ways to do this. Sacramento, I believe, did it based on the housing element and the RENA numbers, which makes a lot of sense. And again, this is for cities to use this process with the money they have in collaboration with the county or HART or school district or whoever they would want to potentially. With the exception of South San Francisco, who already, as the forward thinking city that they are, have already instituted this citywide. And certainly what we were doing here would not displace any of what they did there in the great work that they've done up there. But I do think that we'd also take this opportunity for education of the public and making sure that they know what this is and what this is not, and that this is not some grab by the county to place, for example, 3,000 housing units in Redwood City. I mean, we don't even have the funding to do something like that. And quite frankly, I think that we also have to sit down and talk about what's the right number that we should agree on countywide for this to move forward. Is it 1%? Is it 0.5%? Is it 0.25%? What is it that we can comfortably say that we're going to do as a county, and how can we help the cities and certainly ourselves reach our RHNA numbers, but also provide the vital housing that's required to sustain our workforces, to sustain the quality of life that we have in this county. I'd also like to just talk a little bit about the subcommittee, and I partially blame myself. We only really got to meet one time because of a pre-planned vacation I had, and certainly that wasn't enough time. But I can tell you that the two members that are on the subcommittee are the absolute right members. For Supervisor Corzo, I have quite frankly never in my life met somebody so passionate, so caring, and so dedicated to providing affordable housing for those in our county that are being priced out of this market. She is someone who has constantly put herself in the place of others, and really has such empathy for those, and understands really why this makes great business fiscal sense to provide housing, so we don't have to continue the turnover that we have, that we don't threaten the economic vitality of this county. It makes so much sense. And for Supervisor Mueller, I quite frankly have not come across, and I've only been with the county 11 years, anyone who's done difficult work in such a short period of time on the coast, which is notoriously one of the most difficult places to put affordable housing in a responsible way. And you look at what we're doing there with Stone Pine Cove and the 47 of farm worker housing. The first time in history, farm workers will be able to own their houses based on a project that's built here by the county. I mean, it simply is amazing that this has taken place in our lifetime, in our careers. And for the rest of the board, your legacy is established. You have, over the last 12 years, that Warren and that Supervisor Slocum and Supervisor Pine and Supervisor Canepa have been the majority of your time on the board. You have put $250 million, almost $250 million towards affordable housing. You have built or have in the pipeline over 47 residential units. And I want you to think of that in terms of lives, what that has meant to the lives that you have impacted. 4,700 people that you have worked with to make sure that they have a roof over their head. And that's what I talk about, the forward thinking. That'll be a legacy that you can be proud of the rest of your lives. I don't think any other board has ever done anything to that extent. And it's something that has had real, long-lasting impact and saved lives. And I don't say that lightly. I haven't been in a business that saved lives. I do not say that lightly. I am confident that moving forward, we're going to be able to work this through. I want to thank Hart. What an incredible partner they are and what they do every day, and their board for what they stand for. And I certainly want to thank HLC for their thoughts on this and their continued work in the housing market and trying to provide affordable housing for all those in need, especially in the hardest place in the country to find housing. But in short, I am confident going forward that when the next election cycle rolls around, we will have a comprehensive plan with the cities, with our partners, that we will have this well thought out, that we will have educated the voters as to what this is and what this really isn't. And I think that someday in the not too distant future, in the years ahead of us, we will have an opportunity to celebrate the repeal of Article 34, and that'll be a great day for San Mateo County. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have, or if you'd like to hear more for Mr. Gabi, happy to have him do that too. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Callaghy. Do we want to start with board member questions, or should we just turn to public comment? What's your pleasure, colleagues? Public comment? Okay, we'll turn. Oops.
Well, I'd love to get a chance to hear Godby, so we're thinking we'll have that after the public comment.
Why don't we do that now?
Okay, we'll do that now. So is Mr. Godby available?
Yes. Hello, Mr. President. This is Brian Godby, and I can share my screen. Is it the board's preference that I just run through the entire presentation?
I would prefer that.
Okay, certainly. Let me share my screen, and we can do that quickly. So everybody should be able to see the screen presentation now. And as the county executive was describing, we conducted a survey pretty post-haste. We looked at a variety of different things. We looked at satisfaction with the county services. We've got data from previous surveys in that area. We looked at support for different types of affordable housing, low-income workforce, and affordable, obviously the terminology. We looked at those potential ballot measures. There are two versions in a split sample. And then we looked at a variety of informational, both positive and critical, to see how that would impact voter support. And then we looked at perceptions of the economic future for the fall. The entire survey is based on a sample of likely voters that is reflective on demographic and behavioral characteristics of those likely voters in the county. In terms of the methodology, a little more specifically, this was an online and phone survey. The vast majority of our interviews come from online now. That's kind of obvious. But there are still some people that do take them on landlines. And it is important that everybody have the opportunity to participate the way they want. Again, this was likely November 2024 voters. We were in the field for 3 days from the 30th through the 1st. The average survey on the phone was 20 minutes long. Our goal was 600, and we completed 783, which gives us a margin of error overall of 3.5% plus or minus, or plus or minus 4.95 when we look at those split ballot questions. In terms of the first question then, this was the satisfaction with county services. And you can see if you add the variance somewhat together, we're at 60% satisfied. So that's a pretty good number in the post-pandemic world. As you can scroll across the bottom and see the previous surveys, we go up to about 75%. But one thing that we've seen in this economic and political climate is basically every city, school district, county that we've tested, satisfaction rates are lower. The voters are sort of grumpy, if you will, in this election cycle. The next set of questions tested the various different terms that we might use for the affordable housing, and affordable being one of those, and 56% said that they think that there should be construction of more affordable housing. 53% said more housing, more workforce housing, and 52% said more low-income housing. Essentially, those are all tied. There are small minor differences, but really they're within the margin of error. The next two questions are the first test of the potential measures that the county council and the subcommittee had worked on. And this version, you can see the wording on the right-hand side of the slide. It essentially has a 1% cap. And as Mike described, that's one of the things probably to think about. Is it 1%, 0.5%, a quarter, et cetera? But this version was 1%. And you see when you add the definitely and probably together, we start at almost 63%. As Mike mentioned, again, we do wind up at 57 on this test toward the end of the survey, so we'll see that in a moment. So that's not a bad place to start, but there's a bunch of people that are in the probably yes category. So, there's an outreach effort that would need to happen for this to be successful. The second version, and again, these were split sampled, so it's a random sample within a random sample, is essentially the same. There's some wording differences, but the big difference is instead of using a percentage for the amount of housing, we use a number of units. So this is 2,900. This is at 58%. Statistically, that's tied with the first version, but it is a little bit lower. The next set of questions were presented in a random order, and these are informational statements about the measures, regardless of whether it's the 1% or the 2,900 units. And we basically said, would you be more or less likely to support the measure based on these? It provides you a ranking of what's important to voters. We rank them based on an intensity scale, which you see here, which is a bit of an abstract statistical operation, but we also add the percentage much more likely and somewhat more likely together after we've done our ranking. And you see those on the far right-hand side of the slide. So at the top of this list, the measure would provide workforce housing for teachers, firefighters, emergency medical workers. That's 73% or just about. The measure would not increase taxes in San Mateo County at virtually the same level. The measure will help senior citizens, the fastest growing group of unhoused residents. The measure would help provide housing for low-income public servants, such as city, school, and county employees. While that is a similar issue as the first item in this list, I think the specificity of teacher, firefighters, and emergency medical workers is something that people understand better than public servants, city, county, and schools. And then next is the measure will help victims of domestic violence to find affordable housing, alternative housing. And finally, in the top grouping, the housing in San Mateo County has become increasingly scarce and expensive and is unaffordable for many low-income residents. The next grouping is a statistically lower tier. It's still positive, but it's not as important to voters as that first grouping. In deference to your time, unless anybody wants to go back to it, I'm going to skip over the next couple slides because it's just lower numbers and go to the other side of the coin. We did ask both positives and negatives. And the top of this list is the measure would allow housing occupied by homeless and drug addicts to be developed in a variety of places. The measure would lead to increased property taxes or the worry that it would be increase property taxes. The measure would eliminate state law protections. That's one of the things that Mike talked about in terms of Title 34. The measure would deprive cities of critical tax revenue, and the measure would allow the county to override local city planning decisions that are supported by local neighborhoods. All of those are things that the county executive discussed and good reasons to obviously consider this more fully.
Mr. Godby, can you just clarify whether these statements that were pulled, whether they're factual or not, we decided to pull them because they would likely be used?
That's right. The opposite, the best way to do this kind of survey is to figure out what it is opponents of a potential measure might say in a ballot argument again. And, there's no metric on, what can be included and what can't be included in those, and most judges are hesitant to take anything off the ballot or out of the ballot handbook that people might submit as a ballot argument against, based on whether it's true or not because of the First Amendment, obviously. So moving then, we've talked about positives and negatives, which is the goal of the survey, to see what might happen in a campaign. We do come back to the ballot questions a second time. And for the 1% version, you see we started at 62.6. And as the executive said, we wind up at 57%. So that's certainly above the 50% threshold. But again, on these splits, we have a 5% margin of error. So this could easily be 51.9. which it doesn't give much of a cushion. The alternate version where we talked about 2,900 units started at 57.9 and is down to 54.4. This version, given that 5% margin of error, obviously could be below the simple majority threshold. And then finally, the economic outlook, which has been important on a number of different levels, because it is one of the things that I think is making voters sort of cranky, if you will. And we don't have data in San Mateo County pre-pandemic. It'd be nice if we did. But where we do, this is usually in the high 30s and 40s. But in San Mateo right now, it's 21% think the economy is going to be better in the fall. 46% think it's about the same. 24% think it's worse. You can see that that is an improvement from the survey we did in June of 22, but it's still not probably back to pre-pandemic levels, and that's just the reality of the world we live in everywhere, not just San Mateo County. Having said that, 21% is one of the betters that I've seen in the last 8 months. So if people in San Mateo are feeling more positive than many other Bay Area communities that we've surveyed. So that's the data that we had in the survey. Certainly happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Godby. Questions from colleagues? Supervisor Pine, any questions?
Mr. Godby, did you break down the data by election date? In other words, the pool was aimed towards November, this November, but what about an off presidential year? Is there the data broken down into that category?
There is. It's in our detailed cross tabulations. I can open that up really quickly and look and see if I didn't have that prepared for today, but we certainly do have that data, voting propensity, as well as literally dozens of other demographic breakdowns. But let me find that second test real quick. All right, computer's running a bit slow. So based on voting frequency, so somebody that's voted 8 out of 8 times, that would be somebody who would vote in very obscure or off-year elections. They are 53% likely to support the measure. Somebody that's voted in 1 out of 8 elections, who is more likely to be a presidential low turnout voter, is more likely to be, it would be, let's see, wait a minute. Would be only 48% supportive. So there isn't a dramatic difference between the high end and the low end. And so that means that, you could fare well in an off-year election as well.
Thank you.
Mr. Canapa, Supervisor Corzo.
I just wanted to ask a question about, in terms of what we're seeing in this polling without education, Mr. Godby, would you be able to share how that compares to what you're seeing in other communities? Is that more positive or more negative or just, average?
This is kind of a unique measure, but as I think back to some of the entitlement-related projects I've done over the years, I think the 63% for the 1% is a pretty solid place to start. There is some softness in the 31% that are probably yes, but I think with information and more discussion as the county executive talked about with the cities, I think that this is something that could be successful. Obviously, there you got to hold on to those 31%. And in the short survey that we did, we did lose some of those people, as you can see here again, when we look at the 1% cap, we're down to 57. But I don't think that's terrible. There's need for information is what it comes down to.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Mr. Clerk, we'll do public comment.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. Mueller, sorry. Supervisor Mueller?
I don't have any questions.
Thanks.
Thank you. Members of the public, since this is a special meeting, speakers' comments must be limited to item number 1 on this agenda. So please fill out the speaker snips and then give them to me. At this time, I would like members of the public to raise their hand in Zoom so we can get an estimate on how many folks planning to speak on Zoom. From Chambers, Mr. President, I have 15 speaker slips. While we're waiting for the Zoom hands, we did receive several written comments yesterday and this morning, which were emailed to the board and also uploaded online on the agenda website under meeting details. I received 4 additional comments. I'll just be really quick. One from Frank Vela from Pacifica. He is against this plan. Lydia Miraz is in supportive of this plan, affordable housing. Shannon Wells from Menlo Park is against having county control, so please do not push on this bill. The last written comment is from Terraceria. Please vote against the proposed ballot measure. So that's end of written comments. So from Zoom, so far, I have 13 hands raised and then 15 from Chambers. So would you like to give each speaker how much allocated time is? 1 minute? Okay. So we'll stick with 1 minute. We'll start with Jim Lawrence, followed by Ann Schneider.
Presidents for the last 40 years, former mayor, member of the city council. What I'm most proud of being a husband, father, grandfather, and a great-grandfather. And none of my kids can afford to live in this county. So I tremendously support this effort. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lawrence. Ann Schneider, followed by Stella Lau.
Thank you. First, I'd like to thank my city manager, Tom Williams of Millbrae, and the other city managers in the county who came together a week ago to talk about the issues, and specifically to talk about Millbrae on that. I am grateful to all of those cities. Earlier, C.E. Callaghy talked about how this county works together. And 9 years ago when I was first elected, I believed that. I don't believe it anymore. It has broken my heart and the fact of my very liberal background on this. So when you talk collaboration, historically, that has not been the case between the county. As Supervisor Pine knows, when he apologized to us about taking our land to create the airport, creating problems that we still face today while the county makes 5 revenue streams. The problem with the county stepping over the cities. You guys are doing a Civics 101 class. You need to be talking about the difference between what the county does and what the city does. We have services we must provide and we must fund for. When you take away revenue producing properties, you hurt our ability to care for our people. And that is why we've gotten to this stage. If the county worked collaboratively and recognized each city is different, each funding mechanism is different, we could be collaborative, but not in the approach that you used. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman Schneider. Next speaker is Stella Lau, followed by Patricia L.
Good afternoon, Supervisors. I am here to strongly urge you not to put any related Article 34 measure in the future ballot. This measure is not about building affordable housing. It is about taking away our right to vote on these projects. It is not right to ask for a blanket approval for all future projects, even though we do not know the detail. We need to ensure that local voters have the final say on development in their cities. And Article 34 measure sets a dangerous example on and will only create more frustration with the government. I hope you will not put it on any future ballot. Thank you.
Patricia L., followed by Christina G.
Good afternoon, Board of Supervisors. I want to say that I strongly object the County of San Mateo putting any kind of Article 34 related measures on any future ballots. This kind of measure strips away local elected officials' power and local residents' constitutional voting rights. Low-income housing should be left in the hands of each city and their citizens, as they have the first-hand knowledge of the city's financial situation, housing elements, infrastructures, and environment. An Article 34 ballot measure would give the County of San Mateo and public agencies upfront authorization to build thousands of low-income housing units anywhere without providing any project details and obtaining approval from local cities and citizens. There should be a check and balance between state, county, and municipalities. Leave the zoning, planning, and issuance of building permits to local cities. Please, we do not need this kind of measure on any future ballot. Thank you.
Thank you. Christina G., followed by Jenny Michelle.
Hello, County Board of Supervisors. Article 34 should not be removed from the Constitution, now or even in the future. Please give all the cities some respect when you're deciding important housing projects. City managers, council members, and staff have been endlessly and tirelessly adhering to low-income and affordable housing requirements, trying to fit every state mandated and guideline into place, to the point many cities, municipalities, infrastructures, and residents are stressed, confused, and disheartened. Why is it that you constantly disregard the residents of the county to house people knowingly using their hard-earned tax dollars to do what you want, when you want? The mayor of San Francisco now is sweeping her cities and bussing people out. To where? We are the closest with BART and Millbrae is the end of the line, so we will see the majority of the influx. San Mateo County will again be there to pick up the pieces to failed policies. This is a vicious cycle that the San Mateo County Board of Supervisors constantly cows to. The residents of San Mateo County deserve to have a say in housing in their community. Overriding our voices is unacceptable. Please do not repeal Article 34.
Thank you. Jenny Michelle, followed by Dan Stegink.
I'm Jenny Michelle, recovering homeless teacher.
Hi, my name is Desmond. I'm a fifth grader.
We support the ballot measure. Have you been watching the Olympics? Wow, each athlete has an incredible success story where I'm brought to tears. I feel so proud and uplifting fellow Americans, but why aren't we doing this at home? We aren't championing team unhoused constituents. Each person has a success story, like me. We are also constituents. Having been in local real estate for the last 20 years, the mantra is not location, it's inventory. There is no inventory. This is manufactured scarcity, and it's time to remove the barriers designed to constrict growth, resulting in manufactured value increase. Matthew Desmond wrote about Millbrae in the New York Times last week. I, too, have been losing sleep over Newsom's executive order because we are living inside of a supply deficit, unable to provide for the 11,000 voucher folks on the wait list. Thank you.
Thank you. Dan Stegink, followed by Karen Cutler.
Thanks. I'm not a short guy. I appreciate that. I'd like to thank Half Moon Bay Council and Millbrae Council for supporting the vote to not put Article 34 on the ballot. Over and over in Half Moon Bay, I heard, we can't trust the county. And I wonder why that is. You know, we all heard pollster Godby said, judges are reluctant to remove something from the ballot, even if it's not true. Your county manager is having a pollster poll the actual ballot question. That's not legal. There's voluminous case law that you can't do that. It's got to be an unbiased question. The statement that this overlapped with the decision for the state to drop ACI 2 is not accurate. That was dropped on May 31st. Politico has an article on June 2nd saying that ACA 2 is off the ballot. There was no overlap. We got a total of 20 hours notice for 2 meetings, or we can speak for 1 minute, you know. Why doesn't the coast trust the county? It wasn't that long ago that Pacifica itself was a homeless camp for single men's working camp for all of San Francisco and San Mateo County. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stegging. Karen Cutler, followed by Consuelo Caballero.
Good afternoon, Board. What I'm going to say is probably redundant since the measure's not going to be there this upcoming cycle. But again, my name is Karen Cutler, and I would have been voting against the proposed measure on Article 34. Should this measure be approved, we will have given up our ability to participate and direct in San Mateo's future housing growth. And let's be clear, once it's given away, we never get our power back. Don't let people tell you it's not possible to allow our community to have approval on all individual projects. That's just an excuse for our local governments to have blanket approval and total control without resistance. It's up to our city and county government to work with developers to offer our community projects that will appeal to voters. That's the job. I feel like it's a disconnect between developers and goals, what our community actually needs, if it's so hard to get voter approval. I urge all of us in San Mateo County to follow the example of Half Moon Bay, who has rejected this measure, and vote no on this measure now and in the future, at any time. And we should never be asked to give up our voice, our vote, and our power. That is not how it's supposed to work in our country.
Thank you. Consuelo Caballero, followed by Jess Hudson.
Hello, good morning or good afternoon. I'm sorry I'm not prepared. I thought I was going to be better prepared, and I just found out about this. So I just feel from what I have understood is that the small town or cities would be losing power to the county, and I feel that that is not acceptable. I think that the city of Redwood City would be better managed by the body of supervisors that they already have. Thank you. And by the way, it was really nice to say the Pledge of Allegiance, which I hadn't done since I was in elementary school. Thank you.
Thank you. Jess Hudson, followed by Jeremy Levine.
Good afternoon, Board. I'm Jess Hudson. I'm speaking on behalf of United Way Bay Area today. We strongly support the bulk authorization measure, and we support your decision to hold off to do community education. We understand that it's really important that we have our community on board, that they understand what Article 34 bulk authorizations do and all of the ways that they can benefit the cities and the county. So we stand here as a strong supporter, both for the bulk authorization in the future and as a community partner in educating all of the communities that we serve. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Jeremy Levine, followed by James Cutler.
Good afternoon, supervisors. Thank you to staff and to all of you for being here today. HLC supports efforts by the county to educate our communities about Article 34 to lay the groundwork for a future ballot measure. Authorizing affordable housing is not just about empowering HART to build affordable homes, it's about restoring local control over housing. Right now, duly elected officials are hamstrung by special interests who are able to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars to overturn decisions. Doing referenda on a case-by-case basis on housing projects is not real local control. It's just undermining the ability of the duly elected officials to make decisions and invest in housing for their communities. So I hope that this county, that the supervisors will work with the cities to spread accurate information about what the county wants to do and really empower elected officials to decide what is best for their communities. Thank you.
Thank you. James Cutler, followed by Irvin David.
Name is James Cutler, live in San Mateo, and I'm definitely against it. And I think the county, as well as Samtrans, needs to do a better job of communicating with people, doing different mailers that actually go out to the house to let people know what's going on. In San Mateo, we're currently, where we live, fighting the 101 exchange that's being built. That's going to take out 34 houses if they go with the one build. That includes private residential as well as group homes that are in there on those streets. That is why I'm against having this go through. I think each city needs to determine what is best for each city. And I do believe, yes, we do need affordable housing. I managed an apartment in Burlingame for 10 years, and I dealt with Section 8 and some others, and there is a need for it, but this is the wrong way about going it. Please do a better job of communicating to the public.
Thank you. Urban David, followed by Zach Whitman.
Thank you. My name's Irvin Dawood. I live in Burlingame. My understanding is this is a 1950s, essentially racist measure to exclude, or I'm referring to Article 34, basically to exclude low-income people from coming into San Mateo County. That's unfortunate, or California, anywhere. It's a statewide, obviously a statewide amendment, and we supported it in 1950. It's not 1950 anymore. I don't understand. I'm very disappointed with the city manager's opinion that you shouldn't put this before the public. I think people in San Mateo County want to vote on this. The problem is there's a very small section of people who are very much opposed to low-income housing, and by allowing everybody in the county to vote, that somehow infringes on their right to vote. So I urge you to put it on the ballot. Thank you.
Thank you. Zach Whitman, followed by Rosa Cornelio.
Zach Whitman. I live in Atherton, and I would echo all of the good statements I heard from the people opposing this measure. I also feel that counties were never meant to really have the local control that cities have. That's why cities were created. There's a better way. There can be communication coordination. I believe this problem can be solved on a regional basis, but there's been a gradual power grab, taking the local control away from cities by the state, and now it's the county. Forget it. I think there's a better way.
Thank you. Rosa Cornelio, followed by Luke Nargayan.
I'm here because I disagree with the county of them taking away some rights again from the cities and the towns, and basically acting alone as they wish. We, the residents, like the fact that our cities and towns are able to see over us, having us involved in meetings in the cities we belong to which makes it easy for the people to go to their cities meetings and make us a community, bringing more peace and making us stronger. They listen to our needs, complaints, and concerns, and it allows us to be part of the community. And as the gentleman said in the beginning, he said that that the cities are working well, and that they feel confident that they will continue with the city and the towns. So why are we changing it? Why don't we leave the cities to do, and they know us well? Thank you.
Thank you. Luke Nargayan, followed by...
Hi, I'm Luke Lonergan. I've lived in San Carlos since 2004 and love the community, and I believe in much of what's been said here about low-income housing and housing for people is a critical issue that we all face, and I believe in that wholeheartedly. However, I think that ill intentions are not the problem here. I think it's unintended consequences, and I do believe that this kind of statute was designed to prevent things we called projects and tenements back in the day from growing up out of good intentions but having the wrong effects. And in fact, if you look at the data about low-income housing and what's been done in the past, we need to learn from that. And a lot of it is about local control, understanding the consequences on crime, safety, quality of life that are going to happen when you introduce various populations. And to the question of whether or not this is included in the statute and what is correct or not on the statute's descriptions, is there anything in the statute that prohibits its use by the county to create homeless shelters or immigrant shelters? No. So it could be used to that effect. That would be a tragedy.
Thank you. Our last speaker from Chambers is Armando Sanchez.
Good afternoon, Mr. President, Supervisors, Mr. Nibley and Mr. Callaghy. I just want to say thank you for considering this proposal. Just the fact that you even consider it is amazing and shows how much San Mateo County cares about creating affordable housing. I've spoken to many opponents and proponents of this measure, and I've yet to hear one object to what is interested in doing, which is acquiring and preserving existing affordable housing. So I'm sure I look forward to working with you and everyone to come together to some resolution, because this is a county that always does things right, and I'm sure it will happen again. So thank you for your effort.
Thank you, Mr. Sanchez. Madam Clerk, please proceed with the comments via Zoom.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Mr. President, at this time we have 17 hands raised. Kathy Baird, followed by Dr. Patrick Horn. Kathy, please unmute and begin.
Hi, my name's Kathy Baird, and I live in San Carlos. I strongly support the county's proposed ballot measure to authorize low-income housing. I am excited about what it means for local control over housing. This ballot measure would empower cities to invest in low-income housing options directly. Currently, cities need to make housing investments through local nonprofits or other indirect methods. By authorizing local agencies to invest in affordable homes, the ballot measure would allow cities to control every aspect of affordable housing preservation or development. Furthermore, cities would still have absolute control over local zoning and entitlement processes. The county and other agencies wouldn't be able to build any new housing without approval of the city councils, who are elected by residents to make those decisions. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you. Dr. Patrick Horn, please unmute and begin.
Thank you. I serve on the Pescadero Municipal Advisory Council, and we have not had an opportunity to review this item nor engage with our vast unincorporated rural community, which includes San Gregorio, Loma Mar, and Pescadero. In informal conversations with residents, I've heard fears in the community about haste and overreach, so I'm relieved that this ballot measure proposal has been withdrawn for the upcoming election cycle. The South Coast does not respond favorably to sudden proposals or surprise motions. We need time and information for deliberation and consensus building. We are at a pivotal moment of positive change, thanks to the supervisor's approval of the housing element. In the priority letter that PMAC sent to Supervisor Mueller last year, the Advisory Council advocated for slow growth in housing development on the South Coast, and we have important work to do together now on special needs items, which will assess our local need and potential for production within the context of a community plan. Thank you.
Thank you. The next 5 speakers are Shauna Pickett Gordon, Martin Fox, Elizabeth Madrigal, Laura Smith. Shauna Pickett Gordon, please unmute and begin.
As a 34-year resident of Montera, and as a person who serves as an ally with our farm worker population through my community organization group, Coastside Faith in Action, I strongly support this measure. We talk to folks who not only are affected themselves by the lack of housing that is affordable for them, but who have for generations been sharing apartments that were meant for one family unit with 2 and 3 other families. The crowding is incredible. The hardship is incredible. And still they can barely make ends meet. Please, it's been going on for generations as well, not just one generation. I hope that we get this on the ballot. I will definitely vote for it. Thank you.
Thank you. Martin Fox, please unmute and begin.
Good afternoon, members of the board. Why are we here? We're here because Governor Brown decided to do away with the redevelopment agencies when he had a budget problem that involved the educational system. This kind of controversy could have easily been avoided by following the processes that the redevelopment agencies followed in engaging the local communities. I don't understand why the county, and especially the County Board of Supervisors, can't create a redevelopment agency or a redevelopment agency process that takes these controversies and places them in the context that they need to be resolved. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin. After Elizabeth Madrigal from Midpen Housing, we have Laura Smith, Catherine Dumont, Bill Newell, Karen Grove, and Elsa Schaefer. Elizabeth, please begin.
Good afternoon, supervisors. My name is Elizabeth Madrigal, and I am a policy manager at Midpen Housing. We are grateful for a longstanding partnership that has resulted in nearly 2,000 homes in 36 communities and an additional 12 in the planning stage. We are supportive of the county continuing to explore placing a measure on the ballot to allow government agencies to construct, develop, and acquire housing for low-income persons under Article 34. The need is dire, and this constitutional article amounts to a relic, one that has been shown to have disparate impacts on race and other protected classes. We thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Laura Smith, please begin.
Ken Smith. I want to say good afternoon to the Board of Supervisors and thank you for your time. We do not want to lose our local control to decision making for our own cities. I believe using the term in a lot of literature, affordable housing, is misleading. When you're using home key funds, it's required you to use housing first methodology. This has never been addressed publicly in any of the information that we've seen before. I please urge you to vote no on any future Article 34 ballots. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Ken. Catherine Dumont, please unmute and begin.
Hi, good afternoon. Catherine Dumont. I live in District 4, and I want to thank Mr. Calgi and the board for considering this proposal. I'm deeply disappointed that it will not be put to the people to decide that it's time to give affordable housing the funding it deserves and still retain local control. I'm very concerned about the delay. Is every day of delay is in creating more affordable and funding affordable housing just puts more of our essential workers, seniors, children, families closer to falling out of safe and secure housing. And I hope that the misinformation could be cleared up quickly and that we'll let the people decide how to address the homelessness crisis in our county. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. Next, we have Bill Newell, followed by Karen Grove, Elsa Schaefer, Nancy Goodman, Seema Patel, and Annie. Bill, please unmute and begin.
I want to make a statement. Our county, San Mateo County, is one of the most unaffordable places to live in the nation. Are you listening, San Mateo County? Unaffordable. This measure is about affordable housing. It's not about the quote-unquote poor and low income. Yes, there's housing that needs to be built for them, but this is talk about affordable. Over half the people in our county cannot afford to live here. My children cannot afford to buy a home here. Yes, the measure authorizes banks of affordable housing under Article 34 are relatively common and have been approved by voters by large margins in other communities. The proposed ballot will provide more flexibility to cities and other local public agencies. The measure maintains local control and keeps decisions in the hands of local agencies. I think it's a misnomer for all of these people to say that they have to have Article 34 around and keep control of affordable housing that's built in their communities. This measure will do that. I urge this measure to be on the ballot, and it's a shame it be voted on. Let the people speak. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. 9 hands. Karen Grove, please unmute and begin.
Hi, thank you. I'm Karen Grove. I live in Menlo Park in Supervisor District 3, and I'm also a co-founder of Menlo Together. So speaking on behalf of myself and Menlo Together, I want to say I really, really appreciate staff bringing this forward. I'm really disappointed it's not going to move to a vote, but I do take heart and encourage you. I mean, I guess it's not a done deal, but I really hope that you continue to pursue this and bring it to a vote as soon as possible. There are more than 10,000 people waiting for housing vouchers, and I don't know how many more on wait lists for affordable housing. I think we all know someone who is deeply concerned with their housing stability. And it's really pretty astounding how misunderstood this is. And just quickly, the biggest thing to me is it does not take away local control. It takes away veto power, which is only the control to do one thing, which is block affordable. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Elsa Schaefer, please unmute and begin. Elsa Schaefer?
Good. Sorry, I had to find it. I'm Elsa Schaefer. I live in Menlo Park. My family and I have lived in this beautiful county for 40 years now. I heartily urge you to adopt this ballot measure in the 2026 election cycle after significant education of the voting public. I'm so disappointed, unfortunately, that it can't be on this 24 ballot. I'm deeply disappointed to hear the concerns of so many people who do not realize how vastly this lack of affordable housing will more and more impact their own lives when our teachers, nurses, firemen, restaurant workers, seamstresses, clerks in stores cannot live here anymore. They barely can now. I don't see any other way to relieve this awful situation unless you, the county, do shoulder this issue. And I'm so grateful that you have been considering it. And I hope very much we'll take it up again. Jordan Grimes's point about educating the voting public to the accuracies of what this measure, what 34 does and what this measure would do, is so wise. Thank you again so much, supervisors and staff. And Mr. Count.
Thank you, Elsa. Carol Channing, I saw your hand go up and down, so now your hand is lowered. So, I see you've raised it now. Okay, thank you. Nancy Goodman, followed by Seema Patel. Nancy, please unmute and begin.
Hi, thank you. My name is Nancy Goodman. My family and I have lived in Redwood City for 18 years. I support the county's proposed measure to authorize lower income housing, and I'll vote for it when it comes back. Our kids can't afford to live here. Our teachers, our police, our nurses, our firefighters can't afford to be here, and they should be able to. Affordable housing is such a huge need in our county and state, in large part because there have been so many decades of policy efforts to stymie development, to veto housing. Article 34 is a prime example of an outdated and racist policy. We don't need that anymore. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. Seema Patel, followed by Annie. Seema, please unmute and begin.
Good afternoon. Hi, I'm Seema Patel. I currently serve as the chair of the Planning Commission in San Mateo, but I'm speaking on my own behalf right now. I strongly support putting a measure on the ballot to repeal Article 34 and to put it on the ballot as soon as possible. In the city of San Mateo, residents have consistently indicated in community surveys that the lack of affordable housing is their top concern. And it's very difficult to vote individually on projects because the cost of a special election in our city is $400,000 to $600,000, which is taxpayer funds that would not be going towards affordable housing. And so we simply just do not vote on and authorize these projects. repealing Article 34 would put control back in the hands of the cities by allowing them to spend more than 50% of the cost of an affordable housing project, which they cannot do right now. So I strongly support this ballot measure. I think it restores local control and hope that you can consider it on an election as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Seema. Katie Behruzi, you had your hand up and lowered. So if you intended to speak, please raise your hand again. That was Katie Behruzi. Thank you. Annie, please unmute and begin. Annie, I see you're on the phone. You can press *9 or *6. Thank you. Annie, I think you're unmuted now. You can begin. Annie, I see your audio is on, but we're not hearing you. Oh, and now I think we lost you. Annie, we'll come back to you. I'll go now to Kathleen Daly. Kathleen, please unmute and begin.
Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, Kathleen.
Sorry. Okay. Just want to say thank you to the Board of Supervisors and to County Executive Mike Callahy for bringing this issue forward. Article 34 is racist. There's no other possible way to look at it. And I think history speaks for itself. I do wish the people that have been calling in and writing in would look at the history and understand why some of us are so passionately wanting to see this thing go away. And I also, people keep calling and talking about their rights. Well, what about the rights of low-income people? There are a lot of us out there. They are all in all different walks of life, doing all different kinds of things, supporting this great county and community. So it's time to get rid of Article 34. And the history speaks for itself. I just really wish people would go out and understand why this is so horrible. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kathleen. We'll now go to Amanda Chang, followed by Jane Ferguson Flout. Amanda, please unmute and begin.
Good afternoon, Supervisors. My name is Amanda Chang. My family has lived in San Mateo County for 35 years, and I'm also a staff member at Urban Habitat, so I'm speaking here on my own behalf, as well as someone who has spent their career hoping to make the world a better place and have housing for all. I really want to emphasize actually what Kathleen said and say that no one has the right to discriminate. That's something that has been established in federal law, not something that's always followed, but you don't have the right to segregate. You don't have the right to push people out of your community. So there's no rights here that are being taken away. Rather, it's a right that's being granted to the people to ask us to vote on a measure that will allow us to pursue projects that will make a healthier and safer and more sustainable San Mateo County for the future. And I think that's really important to emphasize, is that we're doing this because we want the right to choose. And I really hope that the county does continue to pursue this. I hope to see the repeal of Article 34 in the future. And thank you for all the effort on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Amanda. We have 5 speakers. We'll now go to, Jane Ferguson Flout, followed by Gia at Housing Choices. Jane, please unmute and begin.
Hi, my name's Jane Ferguson Flout, and I work for Catholic Charities, which provides human services in San Mateo County. And I'm here today to register Catholic Charities support for a county affordable housing proposal under Article 34. And this initiative will increase the abilities of the city and county to actually work together to meet the housing needs of all San Mateo County residents, and will also begin to redress the historical harm done by Article 34 to racially segregate neighborhoods throughout California. And so for these reasons, Catholic Charities supports the county's efforts to engage the community in continuing to explore and support this affordable housing initiative for all residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane. Gia at Housing Choices, please unmute and begin.
Hello, Board of Supervisors. My name is Gia, and I am speaking on behalf of Housing Choices, a nonprofit dedicated to helping individuals with developmental disabilities secure and maintain housing. I appreciate and fully support County Executive Mike Callaghan's proposal to include an Article 34 ballot measure. This measure is crucial for increasing the availability of much-needed low-income housing or affordable housing. We will welcome further discussion to better understand how this proposal can benefit our community. It's important to address any misunderstandings. For example, homeless shelters are already exempt from Article 34, and this measure maintains local control and keeps decisions in the hands of our local agencies. Similar measures have already successfully passed in cities like Berkeley and Los Angeles, so it demonstrates that meaningful change is achievable. We believe this initiative would enable our local agencies to address the affordable housing crisis. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Gia. We'll now go to Annie, followed by Carol Chenning. Annie, please unmute and begin. Annie, if you can unmute, please.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you. If you can lower your audio on your side, please.
Okay. I'm sorry. I had trouble earlier. So anyway, my name is Annie. I'm calling from South San Francisco. I'm calling because I would like to ask the Board of Supervisors do not put the measure on the ballot, as the ballot will definitely remove our constitutional rights as American citizen and San Mateo County resident. Like a lot of the residents in my neighborhood, I moved to San Mateo County many years ago from San Francisco because I like the location that is less populated, and has more space. And I heard from some of the residents here, we began a lot of housing, projects here, and a lot of residents have lost their sunlight because all these big buildings are blocking their sunlight. And I understand there's a need, but I think there is some way we can work around it and to leave the control to the local residents to work with the city to make that possible. And so I would like to share that perspective with all of you here today. Thank you very much. Have a good day.
Thank you, Annie. And I lowered your hand on your second login now. So thank you for clarifying. Okay, we'll now go to, let's see, Carol Chenning. And then we will go to our last hand, which is Katie Behrouzi. And Carol Chenning, it looks like you just lowered your hand, but I will unmute you just in case. Carol Chenning, you can unmute.
Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Yeah, I am a resident of San Bruno, and I've been here since 2008. I don't want this measure to go into the ballot because I strongly believe that local cities should have the right, and the residents should have the right, have a say to low income housing decisions. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. And now our last speaker, Katie Behrouzi. Please unmute and begin.
Hi, I'm Katie Baruzzi. I live in District 4 in Menlo Park, where I serve as a planning commissioner, but I want to make it clear that I'm only speaking for myself today. I think that we need to use as many tools as we can to alleviate our housing crisis. It's kind of crazy how much things have changed here in the last 50 years. We went from being a middle-class community where a family could buy an average home with maybe 3 years worth of income to a place where it costs 15 years of average income to afford the average home. We have cafes that are shutting down and struggling to keep open. We have declining school enrollment. We have essential employees commuting 3 and 4 hours a day, and it's unsustainable, and our quality of life is already suffering. So please do put this on the ballot. Put it on the ballot in a general election as democratically as possible so that people can have a chance to affirm our need to improve our housing affordability in San Mateo County. And thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Mr. President, that concludes public comment.
Well, thank you to all the speakers for sharing their thoughts this afternoon. I'm going to turn to my colleagues now on the board and see if there are comments or questions or perspectives that you'd like to share. So, Mr. Pine, we'll start down at your end.
I appreciate all the public input. I think it is prudent to postpone the consideration of this measure to a future election. I think the subcommittee has done a good job at fleshing out some of the issues, but much more needs to be done, and the communications with the cities need to be enhanced. Thank you.
Nobody wants to go last. Okay.
Great. Thank you very much. First of all, let me just thank the public for really weighing in on this. I think it's great to see the civic process work. I want to recognize I want to recognize the subcommittee. I want to recognize Supervisor Corzo. I want to recognize Supervisor Mueller for their leadership on this matter. I want to recognize our staff. I want to recognize Mr. Callaghy. I want to recognize Ileana Rodriguez, John Niblin, and many, many others. I think it's really important when we talk about the participation of the public and the participation of our city council members. I firmly believe I was a council member for 8 years, and I firmly believe that cities play a big part in decision making, especially around land use. We received many, many letters from different cities, and I think where we landed at was quite responsible. And I think it was responsible because I think at the end of the day, communication with our cities, communications with our residents, that sort of communication is important to the process. And I want to thank Mr. Godby. That poll is you've seen a snapshot of that poll, but it's really wide ranging, right? So when you look at the poll and the data, in particular the poll, the question that was asked was the question that was on the last resolution. But there were other things in the poll that were rather striking. So I want the public to understand that the poll and what was in the poll, really wasn't, we're going to, there's a lot of support for it. Yeah, there was in the initial question, but there were also within the poll, there were things that did not poll as well. And so I think an approach, I think the state legislator, or, they did that. I mean, you look at Wiener and you look at Allen, they had they were going to bring forth this measure before the state of California, right? Throughout the state for people to vote on. They realized right away that, this was probably not the best approach and the timing was not right. And so on both sides of the issue, I want to thank Jess Hardman. Yeah, Hudson, Jess Hudson. I think, we don't agree we agree on a lot of things. Some things we don't agree on, but I think your comments were very thoughtful. I think, there's time to talk, there's discussion, there's education. But at the end of the day, I think what we've done today is we made it very clear. And what's clear as a county, and I think, is that we're listening to our cities. We listened to those letters. We listened to the public, and we decided not to move forward. And this is really a democratic process. It makes me, I'm an institutionalist at times, but it makes me proud of the institution of the county. It makes me proud of the institution of the cities. And I think we made the right decision collectively as a group not to put this on the ballot. And so to the public, thank you for your input, and really thank you for driving this process and helping us to arrive at a place that I do think is responsible government. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Canepa. I'll go next, and then Supervisor Corso, you can go last. My perspective is that, as you all know, the county is a very complex business. I think Mr. Mankia would say the budget is, help me out here, $4 billion. Is Mr. Mankia here? $4 billion. It's an awful lot of money. And as I mentioned, it's a very complex enterprise that deals with cities, special districts, school districts, basically all the agencies in San Mateo County. And for me personally, those relationships have been and will continue to be, although I only have 4 or 5 months left in my term, very important. In fact, probably the most important. And Mr. Canepa spoke about it, that the relationships that we've built are exceptionally important. The bottom line is the county can't do all this work, whatever you want to talk about, can't do all this work on its own. It takes everybody coming together. It takes the nonprofits, it takes the schools, it takes the communities, it takes the cities working together, rowing in the same direction to really get change done. And I think by postponing this matter, that we have a chance, we, the Board of Supervisors and the county, has a chance to go out and listen, to constituents wherever they may be. And also, not just listen, but just from the comments today, there are a lot of misunderstandings about this matter. And, you know, those misunderstandings need to be clarified, and I think we can do that through community sessions, through outreach and so forth. But we just need to do more listening, I think, with the cities. Then we can have an opportunity to take their comments into consideration and tweak the ordinance so that what we end up with at the end of that process is hopefully better legislation that takes into account some of the unintended consequences that one of the speakers spoke about. So for me, I just wanted to highlight that those relationships are very important. And this board is committed to affordable housing. This board stands clearly against racism, and Article 34 is a relic. And just a lot of misunderstandings, and I know Armando Sanchez has worked long and hard on this, and Armando, I want to thank you for your contributions to all this. You really, while you caused us all a great deal of time and energy and work and so forth, we really do appreciate you bringing this matter forward. And let's not give up the fight, and Hart does an amazing job. I just read Supervisor Corzo had mentioned that you just acquired, excuse me, a 78 unit, I think it was? No. 8. Okay, so I exaggerated. Apartment building, and just continue to do the great work that you do. To the subcommittee, Mr. Mueller and Ms. Corzo, thank you so much for all the time you spent on this. To the staff lawyers and the county attorney's office, thank you for your hard work. County Executive Callaghy and Ileana and all the rest, thank you for all the things that you brought to the table. And also, let's not forget Mr. Godby, the pollster. I wanted to thank you for your work on this and basically dropping things that you had in line. And Mr. Callaghy said, there's no way this poll could be done. And I said, if anybody can do it, Mr. Godby can do it. And he did. Thank you. Mr. Mueller, who's not here with us today, but here in spirit, I'm going to call on him. What? People give me hand signals. I'm going to call on you in just a moment. I'm just going to call on you in just a moment. Just thank you to all the residents who came here today and spoke. I was especially moved by the woman who said she hadn't said the Pledge of Allegiance since grade school. Oh my goodness. So maybe at the end we can stand up and do it together again. I don't know. But just thank you all for being here and being attentive and listening. Appreciate it. I'll turn to Mr. Mueller for his comments, and then we'll follow up with Supervisor Corso.
Thank you, President Slocum. At the outset, I want to go ahead and thank everyone for their work on this. I think, and just turning to my colleagues and their comments, speaking to them, I agree with everyone that there's a lot more work to be done. My recommendation is included in the staff report if anyone wants to read it, but basically it comes from a place like Supervisor Canepa. I was a city council member for 10 years. I was a mayor twice. I went through 3 general plans and 3 housing elements. And in interacting with city council colleagues throughout the region and reading the letters that came in, I immediately went back to that place as a city council member who wants to build affordable housing and is required to build affordable housing and is trying to figure out through those housing element processes where to put it, how to get it actually developed, and how to get resources for it, and thinking about how they must have felt when they heard about this in the news, not understanding what the impacts were, and not really being reached out to in a collaborative fashion, and not being able to give input into how this process could empower them to reach those goals and do so in a way where it was being done in a teamwork manner. And all those things, as the county executive indicated, were intended, but they weren't worked on together. And as President Slocum said, going together is really what makes us stronger as a community. And had we gone forward today, not together, I think those who would have suffered the most would have been those waiting this housing, because it would have been a polarizing debate throughout the county. I think at the end of it, the end game would be such that we actually would be creating a more hostile environment to create affordable housing and potentially create an antagonistic environment between our cities and our county in our attempts to do so. And so I think it's the appropriate thing for us to pull back and to be strong and go together and figure out how we do this in a way that empowers our cities to build that affordable housing, to bring those that housing to those in our community who need it so much, and to also empower our cities to be able to meet the requirements within their housing elements. So the recommendations how I think we can do that are contained in the staff report. But I'm very appreciative to everyone for their work on this. And I hope in the future what we can do is, and I know that there was haste around trying to be responsive, but I think we, in that haste, in this circumstance, we got dangerously close to actually creating a problem with our cities. And in some circumstances, we do have statements from our cities floating out around the county that were said again today, repeated to us, that we have some bridge building to do both personally with those cities, but also in public with those cities to go ahead and build that political capital, do good things for those who need help. And so with that, I'll end my comments, but I did want to go ahead and actually, because I know we're being asked for direction today as well, I did want to go ahead and recommend that though we have this subcommittee now, that we table the subcommittee's work until January when the new board is seated, and that the new supervisor, Spear, take my place on that subcommittee to go ahead and do that work with, I'm assuming Supervisor Corzo will want to continue it. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Mueller. Supervisor Corzo.
Thank you. I just want to say that I think that's a great idea, Supervisor Mueller. So I want to thank everyone for being here. This is a really topic in our community, a really important topic in our community. And I think the amount of public comment that we've received is a reflection of that. I want to just speak to the polling that we saw. and why the polling for this election is actually a more accurate reflection of how our community feels about this topic. We know that in presidential elections, you get the most turnout, you get the truest reflection, the truest picture of our entire community coming out to vote. And so, that I think is something that we should all think about. On off years, we don't see as many voters come out, and we know that this county is diverse in income and race and in many, many ways. So I think that polling really makes clear that overall there is more support for this idea than there is opposition. And I want to thank Mr. Godby for doing the polling on such a quick timeline. I want to thank all of staff as well. I know that this was a really hot topic very quickly and took a lot of work and time and energy. But I think that this is a really important step in our county to educating people on educating our entire community on what Article 34 is, what it does, and how it impacts our community in ways that not everyone actually understands. I do think there is a lot of misunderstanding still, and I hope to be able to clarify some of those pieces in just a bit here. And I also want to lift up again HART's role in bringing this forward in our county. The work that HART is doing, just to clarify for folks, it is essentially buying small apartment buildings, units, and preserving them. So it is not actually, it's a housing preservation strategy that we need to see more of. And that is different than just building huge affordable housing projects in our community. And it's an effort that we should all support because it keeps people in our community. And we need all of these strategies in reality. And I also want to remind folks that the HART board did sign a letter and a resolution supporting the repeal of Article 34 at the state level. What's different here is that we cannot repeal Article 34. It is in the California state constitution. But what this potential measure would have done is it would have asked the voters for an authorization for a specific percentage or number. And 1% is 2,900 units. And 1% is, in the grand scheme of things, not a lot. So I'll be quick on this piece of what I want to share, but Article 34 was passed explicitly to prevent racial minorities from moving into white neighborhoods. And it is really problematic. And I want to share some facts on why it's problematic. I know a lot of folks, and most folks actually, really care about government's ability to do its work effectively and in a really fiscally responsible way. And what Article 34 has done since it was passed is negatively impact all local governments' abilities to do that. And I want to actually quote here from an article on the California Association of Councils of Government. It's called "It's Past Time to Repeal Article 34." And please, I really hope everyone does their research on what this actually has done in our state. But there's a quote here, and I quote: "Basic compliance with Article 34 can cost affordable housing developers between $10,000 and $8,000 and can add as much as 15% to the cost of building each unit." So that means that right now, the cost of building units is inflated by about 50%, up to about 50%, 15%. And not just that, but also it significantly delays the time that it takes affordable housing developers to gather all of the sources of funding and actually build affordable housing. Scott Wiener has said that it's a scar on the California Constitution designed to keep people of color and poor people out of certain neighborhoods, and it should be repealed. So I think it's important that we really understand what the impacts are. And, I heard Supervisor Canepa talk about, how this didn't move forward at the state. And that is true. But I want to remind people that the communities across the state are not all impacted the same when it comes to housing. And our county is very uniquely impacted. And the crisis that we have here it's really severe. It's really severe. $2.4 million is the average price of a home, of the price of a median home right now in our county, and that is out of reach for many, many people. And I'll share also that I think the lack of affordable housing impacts us all in ways that we don't all realize, and in ways that we need to accept. So when your favorite restaurant shuts down because they can't find workers, when your parent or you yourself need a caregiver and your only option is to pay a company an exorbitant amount of money, when your child or your grandchild's favorite teacher leaves our community abruptly, or when you interact with law enforcement and you see the exhaustion on their face because they have to drive 2 hours each way to get to work here, I hope you remember that that is what the affordable housing crisis looks like. Those are the impacts. I'm very, very committed to working with our cities and with county staff to continue to talk with cities about what an authorization could look like in the future. I would love to continue on a subcommittee. I think Supervisor Mueller's idea was great. And I really hope that with enough education and enough time, we can build consensus around why this matters in our community, and understand that by giving all public agencies the ability to directly purchase affordable housing without having to deal with Article 34, it actually provides cities and public agencies with more tools to more effectively and more fiscally responsible to be more fiscally responsible in tackling our affordable housing crisis. Everyone deserves to live here. Everyone deserves to live here. Our fastest growing population of unhoused are seniors, and that is a tragedy. We have enough money in this county to do better than that. We just need more tools to do it. Our county is extremely collaborative with many, many of our cities. There are 23 cities, 24, 20, how many? 20, okay. 20, sorry. I only have 3 in my district, so I know how many there are in my district. There are 20 cities in our county, and the vast majority of them know that we collaborate with them effectively. And I don't think that we should take one small city's example of, of friction and think that that is the entire community. I think that, we have a lot of issues in this community, and more affordable housing would solve many, many, many of them. So I want us to be able to better support domestic violence survivors, single parents, seniors, veterans, our most vulnerable. They deserve that. And I think that our community and our residents want that. And that is what I think the polling showed. The misinformation that continues to spread, I think we can inform people, and we can do it tactfully, and we will. So I want to thank everyone, and with that, I'm going to close down my comments. Thank you for listening. Thank you, President Slocum.
Thank you. Mr. Callaghy, are you still with us?
I am still here. Thank you.
Well, wait, I haven't asked you the question yet. I'm wondering, could you give us 3 or 5 suggestions from the top of your list on moving forward, what are those things that we need or should do? Can you help us with that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that Supervisor Mueller's idea is a good one. I was going to ask that we continue to work through the subcommittee, and it sounds like Supervisor Mueller would like to step off and have Supervisor-elect Spirit join. I think that's great. I'm looking forward to working with that group. I think that in January or early next year, I'd like to form a subcommittee of city managers to really work on crafting language that would be amenable to all of the cities moving forward. And I think there is a great deal, and really to set forward a strategy on how we outreach to the community and educate the community. There is a great deal of misinformation out there as to what this does and what this doesn't do to cities' autonomy. It gives cities more tools to really attack affordable housing in a more fiscally responsible way. So I think there's a great deal of education that needs to go on out there. And I think that we can look at the numbers, whether it's 1% or something less than that. We can look at how those numbers are distributed throughout the cities. Those are the things I'd like to sit down with a subcommittee of city managers and really work on, and then regularly report back to them and continue to get input. I'd also like to have listening sessions and informational sessions throughout the county over the next year. And I'll be putting these in my goals so the board can keep track of what's going on there. But I'd also, Supervisor Slocum, since you've given me the floor, President Slocum, I just would also take this second to really appreciate the county attorney's office for all they have done on this hurry up offense and so many iterations and phone calls late at night and early in the morning and away on vacation and everything else that they've done. And really, Ileana also, who Rodriguez has done a fantastic job in really getting information together and getting information to me and keeping me updated. So I greatly appreciate all staff that have worked on this. Thank you.
Thank you. I can't help myself. I want to comment that I'm not going to be here, so nobody cares.
I care.
Nobody cares, I said.
I care.
Okay.
We all care.
Okay. But I just want to remind you that there will be a new representative from District 4 coming. And so as we sit here today and make suggestions about who should be on what committee, let's remember that in terms of the polling, I think, if I recall right, District 4 had the highest percentage of, yeah, let's do this. And so, President, or not, you're not president yet, but Vice President Canepa will, in January, December, select the committees and all that, and then the board could entertain the subcommittees. But I just wanted to put in a pitch for the new supervisor from District 4. Let's not forget that person, whoever it might be. Thank you.
That's totally fair. Appreciate you standing up for your district, there, President Slocum.
If I could just say something.
I agree with deferring the decision.
I just want to say we'll also miss Supervisor Pine just as much as we'll miss you, Mr. President, okay? Just want to make sure that's on the record.
That's not what you told me back in the hall.
I know.
All right, so just to really appreciate everybody's participation today, thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules to be here at the Hall of Justice and join in this discussion. I think it's a real example of local democracy at work. And Mr. Callaghy, we're going to hold you to those performance goals that you outlined.
Absolutely.
With that, we'll adjourn this meeting. Thank you all.
Thank you all. The time is now 2:53 p.m. Meeting is adjourned.